All right, today we are diving into one of the most foundational and, let's be honest, complicated family stories ever told. It's a story about a huge promise from God, a human plan that goes horribly wrong, and a really incredible, unexpected encounter with God right in the middle of nowhere.
At the very heart of this story is a single powerful question. When a promise from God seems like it's taking too long and people decide to take matters into their own hands, who ends up paying the price for that decision? It's a question that really drives this whole thing. So let's start at the beginning.
To really get what's going on here, we have to understand the central tension. It all kicks off with a promise that seems, well, pretty much impossible to fulfill.
So it all starts with this sacred promise, a covenant, that God makes to a man named Abraham. He's told he will have descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky. Now, this isn't just some casual blessing. This is the absolute bedrock of his faith, the one promise that defines his entire life.
And right here, this is the conflict, laid out plain and simple. On one side, you've got this epic divine promise of a legacy, a huge nation. And on the other side, the harsh, day-to-day reality for Abraham's wife, Sarah. For year after year after year, she's been unable to have children. The promise feels huge and distant, but her reality is painful and immediate.
And this is where the human element really enters the picture in a big way. The waiting, the silence, what looks like the failure of God's promise, it just becomes too much for Sarah. She decides she can't wait on God any longer. She's got to find her own solution.
And that decision to take control, well, it kicks off the next part of our story, where what seems like a practical plan just spirals into jealousy, cruelty, and total despair. So here's the plan Sarah comes up with. She gives her Egyptian servant Hagar to her husband Abraham to have a child for them. Now, to be fair, this wasn't totally unheard of back then. It was an accepted social custom. But the source material we're looking at makes it really clear this is a key moment. This plan wasn't born out of faith. It was born out of impatience. It was them trying to force God's promise to happen on their schedule.
And it backfires, almost instantly. As soon as Hagar realizes she's pregnant, the whole power dynamic in the house just flips. Hagar, now carrying the family heir, starts looking down on her mistress, Sarah. So the solution to one problem has created a brand new, deeply personal one.
In response, Sarah just becomes cruel. And Abraham passively goes along with it, basically telling her, do whatever you want. So Sarah mistreats Hagar so badly that the pregnant servant feels like she has no other choice but to run away, to flee into the harsh, unforgiving desert. The human solution has led to some really profound suffering.
This is the turning point, right? The plan that was supposed to secure a family is now completely shattered it. The woman who was supposed to provide an heir is now an outcast, totally alone in the wilderness. So, what happens now?
And this is where the story takes this incredible, profound turn. Hagar's absolute lowest point becomes the setting for a divine revelation that is just, wow.
I mean, just try to imagine this scene for a second. A pregnant, runaway slave, completely alone, no food, no water, no future. She is the very definition of a marginalized person. But the story makes a powerful point right here. Even in that total isolation, she is not forgotten.
An angel of the Lord finds her by a spring in the desert. And the first thing the angel does isn't issue a command, but ask a question that acknowledges her entire existence. Where have you come from? And where are you going? With that one question, he's inviting her to tell her story. He's validating her past and her future.
This whole encounter brings a promise, just for her. The angel tells Hagar to go back, and that she will have a son, and he tells her what to name him, Ishmael. Why? Because the name literally means God hears. Her suffering wasn't silent. God heard her misery.
In response to being heard, Hagar does something absolutely remarkable. She gives God a name. She calls him El Roi, which means the God who sees me. A slave, an outcast, a woman with zero status is the first person in the entire Bible to give God a name, and it comes directly from her personal experience of being seen in her suffering.
So what are the big lessons here? What are we supposed to take away from this powerful, intense story? Well, our source material boils it down to some key lessons on what faith and God are really like.
The commentary we're drawing from distills all of this into several meditation points, which really help us unpack the theological weight of everything we've just seen. And here they are. First, we see how human impatience, trying to help God out, only creates more pain and conflict. Real faith means waiting and trusting.
But maybe the most powerful lesson here is about God's character. He actively seeks out the marginalized. His compassion isn't just for Abraham and Sarah, it extends to the Egyptian slave girl. The message is loud and clear. God hears the cries of the oppressed, and every single person's story is seen and heard by Him.
You know, we often frame this as a story about the testing of Abraham's faith, and it is. But after looking at it this way, you have to ask yourself, is it also, maybe even more so, a story about Hagar's survival? And about the God who sees and hears the people we too often cast aside? Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.